Good morning and welcome to my channel. It is the start of a non-work day, so I'm going to see if I can show you folks something that you've never seen before. So today I'm going to dip into making your own bow for a pocket watch. So making your own bow for a pocket watch. This is a video I looked for on YouTube and could not find it anywhere. I made a bow for a pocket watch only once, and I did it differently. So I'm going to be using this tool right here on the lower left hand screen and upper right hand screen, and it's called a bow mill. And this is a tool, it's fairly vintage, I think, and it's used to actually make the tips of the bow that go into the pendant of the pocket watch. So pendant of the pocket watch, whatever it is called. So the first challenge then is to find a pocket watch to make the bow with, and let me just describe what I think I'm going to do. So this is a total adventure. I made a bow once before. I used coat hanger wire on it. I pounded it down into shape. Before I did that, I cut it to size and put it in the lathe, and I used the lathe to grave the tip down to the right size to fit into the tip of the pendant, as I'm showing you right here. So I used the lathe to do that, to grind it, and I used, I think, pliers, hammers, you name it, to turn that piece of coat hanger wire into what would resemble a bow. So, and it was actually pretty good. When I finished it, it worked out fairly good. It wasn't perfect. I don't know if I can make a perfect bow. The challenge for me will not be finishing the ends. It'll probably be the bending of the bow into the right shape. So I'm going to try to do that. I'll see if I can either videotape that or make clips of it so you can see how that might be done. There might be better ways of doing it if you've got really good machining tools and you're able to take a piece of metal and bend it perfectly and round it perfectly. But the first thing I'm going to do is describe this mill really carefully, and you can see the mill and how it works, and the bow mill, and then I will go about pounding the crap out of a piece of metal to try to make it look like a bow. There's no other video online that shows how to use a bow mill, and I do not know how to use a bow mill yet. So by the end of this session I'll have a better idea, but I will not be an expert on making bows. And because you don't have to do it very often, it's not something you're going to get very skilled at. But I figured I'd make a video in case you guys are interested, or you have a bow mill, or you see these on eBay and you want to buy one, and what the heck am I going to use this for? It's single purpose as far as I know, and we're going to try to use it today and make a bow. So there you go. There you go. Make a bow. Oakley dokley, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, the bow mill. So here's the bow mill. This is the box it came in, and this box, I bought it from a gentleman off of eBay, I believe. And the box was pretty nice guy. He lives up in Canada, and the box was kind of destroyed because he put it in a soft envelope, and it was the top was good, but the bottom was all in pieces. So it was all in pieces. So I very easily used, again, my favorite glue, which is, reach over and grab this here, this cement. So GS Precision Applicator for fine detailed work. I use this cement to the GS cement, actually GS Precision Applicator for fine work. So it says it's for hobbies, crafts, bonding or model building, ceramic, plastic repair, fly fishing lures, watch crystals, jewelry making, rats, bats, cats, broken boards, and especially wabbits. So that's what this is for. Same stuff that the Tasmanian devil uses this for. And this stuff is really cool because you can apply it, like I said once in another video, when you take the cap off this GS cement, there's a long needle-like applicator, and then there's a needle on the other end. You got to kind of line up to put it back, and it stays in good shape through use, and it's easy to just pinpoint it. So what I did was I took this all apart, or is already in pieces, and then I applied it to all the corners and the bottom, and then I used rubber bands to hold the thing together. There's still some material falling off of it. I also used a black marker to just mark parts of it that were not black anymore, and I'll probably continue to do that as little edges flake off the thing. So anyway, I used a rubber band to attach this all together and get it in good position. So I've got to kind of make sure I'm in camera all the time when I'm talking here. So there you go. So this is the bow mill. Enough about the glue. The glue's great, but I wanted the case to look really, really nice. I think this probably is a 100-year-old tool, 100 plus maybe, don't know. And this tool works in a vise, so, and not a Miami Vice, just a vise. A Miami Vice is a TV show with Crockett and Tubbs from years ago. Why I remember that, I don't friggin' know. Don Johnson. Anyway, Miami Vice. So this is the bow mill here, and when I received this, these little tiny grinders were not in place. So all I did was unscrew this part here in the bow mill, and this moved up like so, and I put these little wheels. I sized them because they're going from large to small. I sized them, then I put them in place. And then I removed this jobby doohickey here, and I went about oiling these so that when you turn the mill, as you can see, let me just get a good angle on the mill turning. There we go. Yeah, as you can see, that grinder, whatever you call it, the grinding wheel, right here, right there, is moving in a circle. So that grinds the metal. So the way this works is, so that tightens this up. I oiled these up nicely, and I was wondering, what's this for? This little thing here. Again, another jobby doohickey, of course. That's the technical term again for this. This ensures that little mill stays in place. You just stick it in the back like that. It goes through, and then this little wheel here stays in place. All good, right? And then you can tighten this down as well once that's in place, so everything is nice and tight. And then you oil this here to make sure it's lubricated so it spins nicely. You might be able to put cutting oil in there, but I'm not sure if that's necessary. Now, I haven't used it yet, so there you go. There's also a little hole on top here, which I'm assuming is for oiling as well. I don't think it's for maintenance. So I threw a little bit of synthetic oil, some 5W20 synthetic or 0W20, something like that, in there. It's the same oil I use for my lathes, so I put that in there so it could keep that nicely lubricated. And then I said, okay, what the hell is this thing for? This is also, I took a piece of fake sandpaper. This is steel wool, but it's not steel wool. And I rubbed this thing down because it was pretty tarnished, I think, from being old. And I rubbed this down a bit so it looks a little better. Rubbed the ends, clean it up a bit. And then I oiled it, and I oiled this. There's a little hole in here too, which again, assume it's for oiling. And there's a nice long spring in there, right? So when it's in this position here, the spring is there's no tension on that spring at all. And then when you pull it out, you can see the spring on the inside of this thing, right? It's all about camera angle, isn't it? So that just basically compresses the spring, moves this along. And what this is when you put the bow, which I'll do later, in here, it ensures one end tip of the bow is on this side, the other tip of the bow is inside this little wheel. So you're putting it in like that, and then you're letting this go to make sure the bow, the end of the piece of metal, the stock metal that you're using to cut the bow, cut the tip of the bow, is in there. So you have to determine, first of all, what size metal do I need for my bow, right? So, and I'm just using a piece of brass here that I have. So I just went through all of my brass and said, what could I use? This one's too big, that one's too small, blah, blah, blah. And this is kind of a test cut. And I said, let me get a pocket watch that I have that doesn't have a bow. So this is a old junker watch. It's not worth much money. It just says a snap-on back, and I think it's a full plate, crappy-do watch. So, but it didn't have a bow. I can't remember whether I borrowed this bow for something else or just doesn't have a bow. So I look at the hole size and the hole depth, right? So I want to know what size that is and what depth it is. So measuring is very important. So how do you measure a bow? So let's get into measuring the bow. Okay, this is a tool that's used for measuring distances in plates for pocket watches. And what happens here is there's a little knobby that sticks out here, and as you rotate this part of the tool, make sure you get rotated in the proper direction here. So counterclockwise here, the little knobby sticks out even further, as you can see, right? Because it's very excited about being used, and the measurement here is being transferred up here. So now you know exactly how deep this needs to be. Now in this particular gauge, I had one little issue, is that the knobby is sticking out just a little tiny bit, right? So I have to say, okay, it's already sticking out like I don't know, let's say 1 millimeter out, maybe less, when this is closed, right? So this is closed and the knobby is sticking out a bit, so I want to make sure that I don't have issues with that. So I'll just add that. So what I'll do is take this watch, and I'm going to stick the measurement tool in where the bow is accepted by the pennant. So I'm going to open that up again, and I'm just going to go to the extreme a bit and see if it's sticking out. So do that, and then push that in, and guess what? It's got room still. So even with this distance, there's still room in there. Let me go a little further, and like that, and nope, it hit bottom. So I want to make sure that the bow is no bigger than that, because it hit bottom, so I don't want to cut more material off than that. And it's a little bit rounded on the edges on the inside of that hole, so I'm going to test the edges as well, and I'm going to shrink this down a bit because it's just a bit too big, like that. And then I'm going to measure again, and so that's perfect in there. I'll check the edges, kind of just there on the edges, and now I want to take away a little tiny bit more to compensate for that knobby that was sticking out. So that's good enough there. So that is how much material I need to grind off the end of this metal for that bow. So that is a measurement I have. So what I'll do is transfer this measurement to the proper tool to do this. My micrometer. This is my digital micrometer, and that way I don't forget that measurement. So I could mark it on the end with a marker. It's very small. So, but I'll just put my battery in my digital micrometer, because you don't want to keep your battery in there when you're not using it, and just throw that in. And this is you're going along the adventure with me here, by the way, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So there we go. We can zero that out, and it is in millimeters. And now I want to transfer this measurement. I could eyeball it, or I could take my measurement here and do this, or whatever. So for now, I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'm going to say I'll use this end of it, and I'll just line it up perfectly. There's a lot of ways I could do this, but it doesn't have to be an exact science. So it looks like around 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. All right, 1.5 millimeters looks like it's perfect. Okay, so 1.5 millimeters is what I need to leave on the end. So I'll make sure it's no more than that. So 1.5 is safe. So I'll get myself a pen and write that down. Alright, so let me just make sure I'm in focus again. I'm not sure how I get out of focus, but so I'll say the end is 1.5 millimeters. So I can put 2 M's in there, can I, for millimeters? So that's 1.5 millimeters. So I probably don't know if I need to use that tool again. And when you're finished with your tools, you should get them back to the way they were, set them back, not too much tension on the end there, and put that back into the bag. And I have a magazine or an old book, 100 years old, that shows me what all these tools are, and I actually found that tool in there. So if I was smart, I'd use the right name for it. So now I want to measure this, which is how long the bow will be. So I just need to straighten out the material. I just need to straighten this out a bit, and then put that down. And I can actually just draw a line here, and just to make sure I don't forget. So it's from here to here. That's how long the bow will be. That bow length. and bow bridges. So in this case here, I can measure it as well, because this Jobby Doohickey has got a lot of distance it can use. So if I just do that, the bow is around 38.9 millimeters, and you can't see that at all in the camera, so I got to move some stuff around so you guys are pissed off at me because I'm doing all my work over there. So all I did was drop this down like that, draw a line here, draw a line here, like so, and then I use my micrometer, my digital micrometer. It's around 38.9, maybe a little bit bigger, not sure. But I'll just, let me see if I move it down to 38 so I can remember the number. That's fine, 37.9. So 38 millimeters is a good number, good enough for moi. So I'll just get my pen out again, my Binford 5000 PEN, and go like that. So I said 38 millimeters. Look at that. I think I took drafting in high school, and I'm such a messy writer. I don't know what's happening. Precision work, for a guy that does precision work, I sure write messy. So, and I got slapped in the back of the head a lot as a kid for not writing within the lines. So I was wondering why you had to keep writing within the lines. Are people reading within the lines? Like, did people need lines to read? Probably not. I don't think Sanskrit was ever written between the lines, right? In fact, the Egyptian writing was never between the lines. It was sort of relative between the lines. Anyway, I can remember the teachers yelling at me for writing between the lines. So that's 38 millimeters. That's the squirrel moment again. So now I know the end point, at what it's got to, how deep it's going to be, and I know 38 millimeters. Now the mystery has to happen. How thick does this need to be, right? So I kind of eyeballed this. I looked at the metal I have here, and I want to be able to cut enough material away on this metal so that it fits in there, but I don't want the metal to, I don't want it to be the same size. Even though you could make it the same size, I want to trim that down a bit. So if I look at that, and I try to stick that inside that hole, right, I know it's not going to fit, right? It's too big for the hole. So I will be able to grind some material away on this. But in fact, do I know? I don't really know how big that hole is. But I know that this material should be fine for it. So what I need to do then is I need to take this mill and make sure that the mill is going to mill away enough material from the hole to fit in there. So I could eyeball this, or I could say, okay, if this is not fitting and I've got to put material in, I can always go from a bigger mill to a smaller mill. And I'm assuming that you don't cut the material with one cut with the same size. I'm assuming that you're just taking material away each time, right? And you're cutting that material down, right? The other thing is, when you cut the material, it's going to bottom out on the end of this here, right? So on the back of this, so it's going to cut down from this grinding wheel, and it'll bottom out at the back of this. So is that distance the same as what I needed, which was 1.5 millimeters? So I can measure that distance as well, and if I do that, then I don't have to worry about measuring the end tip. I just grind it down until it hits the back, right, which is a smarter way of doing it. Just thought of that. So if I turn my micrometer back on and just measure the width to that and say, okay, that's 3.7 down from there. That's not the width I wanted. This is, it looks like it's about 2 millimeters, maybe 2, yeah, 2. So it hits the grinding wheel. It's not flush here, so you're going to take a little bit off for the grinding wheel for that distance. So if I were to just take it down a bit, 1.7 millimeters, and I'm at 1.5, I'm thinking if I just grind it to the base, right, you spin it, you grind it to the base, that's a good enough end tip. So that should work, because if I go down to 1.5 millimeters, let me see which is what I said the depth was, and I just eyeball the edge of that, that is, yeah, it's a bit, it's just inside of the grinding wheel, I think, just inside. So that 1.5 depth is probably perfect, and I don't have to bother measuring it. So when I grind it in and go as I turn the wheel, I just go to the base, just go to when it hits this base, and I should be fine. So what I think I need to do first, right? I can't, the mill is made so that the metal is bent, right, around in a circle first and prepared, and it's all lined up perfectly. And then the last thing you do is you put it in here and you grind the ends. So I'm going to try to do that. The other way I could have done it was just grind the ends by holding this in the vise and somehow fixing this, but then I'm not really using the tool properly, right? So I think I have to fashion the metal first, and what I'll do is start the grinding with the bigger wheel, right? So maybe the one on the end here where the metal fits in is not right. The next one here is a little bit wider, so I may want to use this one next, and then I'll grind that down and then see if that fits, and then if it doesn't, then I'll go to the next one and see if that fits and get to the right size, right? I think that's what I need to do. So progressively go smaller as I grind it, and that should grind it down to the right size. So, but the first thing I need to do is take my metal and I need to pound the crap out of it to form it into a bow. Now I can do the initial bends with using a wrench and wrapping it, and then finalize it, finish it off with my Bugs Bunny Wile E. Coyote anvil. So this is the one that dropped on his head in probably every Saturday Bugs Bunny I've ever watched. So I'd like to really get it to size, but I'm not sure whether I should start pounding it to size with this or to bend it with pliers. Sometimes when you bend it with pliers, it makes a sharp bend, and then it's very hard to get rid of that sharp bend. If I pound it with this, it's going to bend it to size. It is going to make marks on the bow, but no doubt I can take those marks off with a Dremel tool. So fear not, there is mark removal by using a high-speed Dremel tool at about 15,000 RPMs with red paste, and that'll grind any dents I make in this. So I also want the ends to be filed down flat, absolutely flat. So when I measure this puppy dog, I'm going to leave a little bit more on the ends because I want to file it. So I got to cut the piece of metal and then bend that into place. I might leave it as a longer piece of metal to start off with so that I can start shaping it before I cut it. But the first thing I'll do is get a marker and just mark how big this thing needs to be. Alrighty then, so let's measure how big this needs to be. Right? Oh, this is so exciting. I know it is. It's exciting to me because I've never done this before, so it's kind of neat. It's a good day off project, I think. So there we go. There's a little bit of compression on the end here, so I'm going to take some more distance off of that because of that. And I want this to be finished before I start pounding, because when it becomes a bow, it's very difficult to work on that end. So I'm going to just do that, and I'm going to mark it here to leave a little bit more as well, because when I cut this with my hacksaw to get to the other side of the bow, it's going to be probably a little rough, and I want to file that flat. I think I want to file it and maybe take the end, if this is the end of it like this. This is the enlarged picture here. I probably will file it so it's got a bit of a round on the end like that. That way when it enters the mill, it's not going to snag up on the edges of the grinding wheel on either side of the mill. It'll go in nicely, and then I'll mill it right to the back of that stainless steel plate. So it'll go right to the back here of that plate. So that's what my intent is. Looks like a tuning fork. So I've marked it now. So it's marked there, and it's the right size. I'm going to just mark up the tip here so I know which side of this piece of metal I'm using, because if I do go downstairs and start pounding and I realize I picked this side, I'll be pissed off to no end. And I'm going to pound it with a hammer. I'm not sure if that's the best method, but I can probably round it to the right size by doing that, because I think that's what that would be used for. And again, I got to use a decent size hammer. So I'm going to go downstairs and actually start pounding. I don't need to videotape the pounding probably, although you probably want to see me take a hammer and just take this and start going bang, 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 bang as I do that. So, but I don't have a camera down there, so too bad. All right, here we are in the workshop. Here's my piece of metal here. And I got to put a pair of glasses on, but there's my metal, and that's not the right side. There's the right side. I've got a vice grip that's used for metal work here. I've got another BA vice grip here, right there. That's a bit bigger. I got a lathe under here. Look at that. There's a watchmaker's lathe here. I got another watchmaker's lathe under here. Thing of beauty. Look at that. Another watchmaker's lathe. And I got my C1A1 Dremel tool for working on it later. So I'm going to just start pounding this into the round with a hammer. I have another hammer that's smaller that I might use, but I'm going to pound that and start pounding that into shape. So stand by as I maybe videotape progress. I just jammed my anvil into a bigger lathe so I could get some security in there and weight. So the first thing I want to do is file the end off of that and flatten it. So that's filed down, flattened, and rounded a bit on the end, which is good. Alright, I've got my other hammer, so I'm just going to start rounding that up, pounding it, and I'll show you the results. So there's the start, and you just take it easy and start moving it upward as you pound it round, and it should pound round to whatever dimension you use right here. There we go, getting a little bit rounder. I'm holding my iPhone to do this, which is not the best way of doing it. I'm just working my way to the cutoff point here, so I'm just rounding it off nicely. Now it's starting to look like a bow as I just keep pounding it. I pound it here and then I move it up here just to get it more of an angle on that, and I just keep working the metal as you work it around. So I think I've got it round enough, and now I've got a hacksaw at the mark. Now it's hacksawed at the mark. Take it to the vise and clean up the end with a file. So a little bit of pounding, and that's what I have so far. And the ends, I filed the ends as well and took the edges off the ends. Now I've got to make those tips turn in more. So I've determined the best option is to put that in a vice grip so it's held really nicely. And then I will actually go back here again and see if I can turn those tips in by hammering them in a bit. I probably could take a pair of pliers and bend them in, but I want to try doing this. I also want to reduce the diameter, or the overall diameter of this, by pounding it just a little bit on the ends too. So I've hoisted my anvil up a little higher so I could use these corners here for bending the metal, and maybe put the end of the metal in here. Not sure what to do here. It's all experimental. Alright, it's starting to take shape. The bow is looking pretty good, but I've got to turn those ends in somehow. So turn those ends in. So I'm going to try, I squished it in my other vise, and I'm going to try tapping it like this to see if I can bend those ends in. Alright, method 3 was to clamp it on the edge and then just enough material there, and then work that around that way to move those ends in somehow. Alright, I've got a roughed in bow. I'm hoping that I integrated the right videos in there, but I pounded the crap out of this to rough it in, and now I'm going to see if I can put this in the bow mill. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do is loosen this a bit. Here, pull out the brake, and then go over to the second biggest hole. This looks like a rough-in one here that you just kind of use to rough it in. Let me see if that works, because it looks like a rough-in one, which is it's a different cutter than the rest of them. So I got to assume that that's used to just rough the part in so it's ready for the other cutters. So I'm going to just move this out of the way and hook the end in on this side. Again, I don't know how the hell this works, so bear with me as I put that in there. There we go. And I'm going to turn this and see if it does any cutting for me. That's just going to rough in the end, I think. And see what that looks like. It's starting to rough it in a bit. I'll just rough in the other side here. Just put that in, and you pull this out and then anchor it on the other side. And I'm holding it on this right here just to give it something to hold on to. And spinning that around Again, I'm not sure if that's providing enough pressure, but I'll just push on this a little bit more. And I think that just might round out the end. Not sure. I don't know if that did anything, but now let's move over to the Wheel of Fortune. So I think I said 2 over was the right one. So let's move 2 over here and see what happens. This is all experimental. Experimental. Put the bow in there, and the bow is still at a bit of an angle, so I'm not sure if you have an angled bow whether that's going to cause any issue at all, or will it cut the knobby for the angle. There we go. Just doing a little bit of cutting, I hope. And see what that looks like. Yeah, it's cutting it a bit, but not a lot, so I probably need to go to a smaller size. But just to be consistent, I'll do it on the other side as well. And anchor that, and then maybe you do it the other way. No, I think it's cutting this way. See, yeah, it looks like that's the way it would cut it. So I just spin that around a few more times until it feels like it's smooth, and it is. And it looks like there's metal coming off. And then it's loose now, so I'm gonna just move that over one until it's a little bit more tighter, or more tighter. Do I have to say more tighter or just say tighter? Hopefully just tighter. Tater. A little tater. There we go. Now I've got that in there. Tighten this up like that, and then hold that on top, and then I can feel a bit more grinding there going on. Not a lot more, but a bit. And it looks like it's doing something. Something is not what I want. I want it to actually cut it to be the right size. Like that. And then turn that. And put a little pressure on the end here, because that puts a little pressure on the bow, which is probably going to do more cutting if I do that. Oh, I can see material coming off now. That's kind of cool. I think once you turn the corner, the material starts to come off. I may have to have a look at that, because it looks like it's sawing off lots of material. Oh yeah, look at that. See the knobby on the end there? It looks like it's sawing off material off that, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to turn it around the other way. It just needs to get going, that's all. And then put that in there like that, and then like that. And all I did was put a little extra pressure on the end here as I turned, so it would start actually cutting, right? And I think you just keep doing that until you feel it starting to cut. And you put a little more pressure on the end there. There we go. There you can see metal coming off now. And the good thing is it comes off at the correct angle, so even if your bow is round or rounded, it's still, the metal is still coming off. Look at that. I'm going to take off even more this time. Right, let me have a look at what I got. It's a little tiny knobby there and a little tiny knobby there. Now I'm not sure how big this pocket watch on the end is, but yeah, those are pretty adequate knobbies for the end here. So I should probably, yeah, it looks like it's the right size, is it? Let me see. Hang on a second here. Just going to see if that, yeah, that is the right, I think that is the right size, yeah. So why don't I just take a little bit more material off of these things and see where we're at. Also, I'll have to open that up and close it down again after. So I'm going to take a little bit more material off of this because it does seem to be working. It does seem to be cutting, which is nice. I'm going to make sure this is in the hole right, like that. And this is on the right side there, and then keep a cutting. Again, putting a little more pressure on the end of this thing here so it can take off more material. And it does look like it's cutting still. You just have to cut it down deep enough. And we're getting more material off of that. It's kind of cool, actually. Oh yeah, so exciting. Bow cutting. All right, let me stop for a sec and then sort of just move this out. And now we've got a pretty significant little knob here on the end. And I think I'll leave that one like that and then just do a little bit more on this side. I probably had to bend this even more to get a better angle at that. So the bow is basically entering the pennant at the right angle. So that's just experience, but I just had to. You could probably buy some stock bows as well that are already made and cut. But as you can see, there's plenty of material coming off of this one. I think if that metal was entering this cutter at exactly like a horizontal, like coming directly into the cutter as opposed to being at an angle, you'd probably get a better knobby on the end, right? So you can run out of knobby material the minute it grinds out. So let me just move that out. Oh, there's a significant knobby there, so look at that. There's two knobbies on the end there, as you can see. So I'm going to just widen this up and see if it fits in the pocket watch. Let's try it out. So this is obviously not perfect, but for a first shot it's not too bad. So I've got a little knobby there and a little knobby there. I don't have a lot of material on the end of that one, so what I'd want to do is that when I'm fashioning this, I'd want to bend this inward more. So when it cuts the tip, it's cutting it at the right angle, because I don't have a lot of material there. So I think that when I put this on the watch like that, it'll stay, but it's at risk of breaking because there's not a lot of material there. But it's a good. It's not a bad way of cutting it, and as you saw, that it cuts the ends really nicely. So that worked really well. All right, now to fit that in the end, I'm at risk of breaking everything here, but I should widen this a bit, but since it's brass, I'm not as worried about it. So I'm just going to try to spring that back and fit that into the end of this old pocket watch here. There we go. So there we go. That's fitted in the end, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it's pretty cool. So it works. I would smoothen that out, but as you can see, the little jobby doos on the end work nicely. So that bow mill actually milled them up nicely. So that works. You could probably buy stock pieces that you wouldn't have to shape, but I'll just put the videos on to show a little bit of how I shaped that. You probably saw it already because I'm going to put this before this point of time, and that worked kind of nice. There, as you can see on the bottom left hand side, I made the bow, and I showed you how to mill that, and it milled actually really nicely. It's at an angle there, so if I were to make another one of these bows, I would probably try to get that tip curved first, and then I would pound out the round here so it would be perfectly round, but try to tip that, just try to make that tip curved first. Also, like I said before, coat hanger wire works actually pretty good. It's pliable enough to be able to pound it into shape. This is brass, so it's a little soft, but as I showed you earlier, it made some very nice little end points on there to fit into the watch, and I was able to use the right size grinding wheel within the bow mill to do that. So So that's my video today on making a bow. So it was an experimental video. I'd never, well, I made one more bow before, but I've never used a bow mill. They're pretty cool as far as I'm concerned. I think it's the only video on YouTube that shows you how to finish off a bow. Making the actual metal and measuring it is also important. So on how to do that, you may have other techniques that you can use or tell me about that are better than what I was doing. If you've got a brake or something, some machining tools, there's probably a better way of making a circle, right? So I suspect, and if you have really long wire or coat hanger wire, you can grab the end and just wrap it around a pipe, and that pipe will make it round. So that's another way of making it. So, and you could wrap it around a spiral and do it over, like wrap it over itself, and then straighten it up, cut it and straighten it up, and it's going to be a perfect circle. So there's other ways of making it, but this is just a general video on how to do this, and just a little quick assessment of this really cool little tool. So thanks for watching my channel. Please subscribe to my channel and share it amongst others. I'm almost at 4,000 subscribers, which is kind of cool. I'm hoping to get to 10,000 and maybe more. But if you want me to do any work for you in the future, just email me at jdwatchservice@gmail.com, jdwatchservice@gmail.com. And thank you very much for watching my video, and have a really, really fine day.